Subcommittee Subcommittee on Bylaws and Internal Processes. This meeting is subject to Oregon law and City of Portland administrative rules and will be recorded, as you heard. If the Spanish language interpreter, Manuel, yes, I don't see Maya yet, but if they are both here, can you please give the information on Spanish language interpretation, please?
Sure. So I have a question. Are you going to assign us to the Spanish channel?
Yes.
Okay, so, but you'll do that later, correct?
That'll happen right after after you say it.
Greeting. Okay, not a problem. And the other partner, it is Maria Fayos. She's already logged in there.
I am. I'm here.
Oh, thank you, Maria. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Maya is not going to be here today. I'm sorry.
That's my email.
Oh,
Okay.
now I'm understanding. All right.
Yeah.
Forgive me.
Okay, so here I go giving the greetings.
Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes a todos aquí presentes el día de hoy. Esta reunión que se va a llevar a cabo con lo que es la ciudad de Portland y la comisión o el comité de la policía. Se van a repasar lo que son los estatutos de ley y algunos reglamentos internos. Así es que vamos a dar inicio a esta sesión. All right.
Thank you, Manuel and Maria. The city also offers ASL interpretation, which is being provided, excuse me, by Ashley and Andrea. You can pin their video feed if that's helpful to you. Finally, the closed captioning is turned on in Zoom and as another means of assistance. Please note that this is an automatic captioning feature and will not always be accurate. The city supports access to meetings of the Police Accountability Commission and can provide other languages and other language support as well. Please email in advance for future meetings, and either as a response to a public meeting notice or directly to the police accountability at Portland, Oregon Gov to ask for other assistance, access to other assistance, interpretations to other languages. For this meeting, the chat function is enabled for commission members to communicate with each other. Members of the public will be asked to use Zoom and the Q&A feature, which is at the bottom of your screen. As the commissioners are presenting and discussing things, if you have an attending question or comment, please feel free to submit it in the Q&A portion of the webinar. We hope to use this feature to help guide conversations during the meeting and future meetings and agenda topics. We'd like to be clear that not all questions will be answered during this meeting, but if both questions and answers will be visible to you, it will become part of the recording. Sorry, I am reading a script for this part because it's just more information for everyone. Okay. To access this feature, click on the Q&A icon in the middle of the screen. So now that we've got that out of the way, this is the first meeting for the subcommittee of the Police Accountability Commission for bylaws and internal processes. All city advisory boards and commissions are required to have bylaws to govern themselves, and several have additional documents such as community standards and agreements, community guidelines, and other operational processes. The Police Accountability Commission met on December 9th and December 18th to set up the organizational phase of work, which you can see on the timeline here. This timeline runs through from January through March, part of this year, and that includes the setting up of this subcommittee. We can move to the next slide. This subcommittee meets again Tuesday, January 18th. There will be a meeting of the other subcommittee, which will be developing community engagement framework, and for the commission on January 20th. The full commission will be meeting on January 27th. You can find more information on all of these meetings at portland.gov/police-accountability. All right. Next slide. As this is the first meeting of our subcommittee, we'll take a few minutes to introduce each member of the subcommittee. And following this, we'll have a discussion to help frame the bylaws. And after that, we'll move into discussion about the 6 sections of the bylaws for today's discussion. And would like to just have a reminder of the community standards that you agreed to. I'll just read these. Keeping the needs and concerns of the local community at large, region, and at the forefront of the work, keeping focus on the objectives of the meeting and individual agenda items, utilizing facilitators to note additional topics and discussions. Please arrive on time, which most people did. Let the group know if you're unable to attend meetings. Keep multitasking to a minimum. We really want your attention here. This is such an important thing for us to be doing together. Contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. Treat others with respect and be supportive of each other. Keep in mind that everyone has their own truths. This is really important. We all have different perspectives here, and I just want to help support having some cohesion while doing this process. Listen without agendas and refrain from interruptions. Be polite, courteous, and thoughtful. Assuming good intention for our colleagues and collaborators. Challenge ideas rather than individuals. Approach different opinions with curiosity. Seek to understand. So, as we all know, we don't always understand each other at the first glance. So it's always good to ask questions and have more communication in that way. Use I statements. So basically announcing that it's your story and not somebody else's. Affirm other speakers. Do not use violent words. Instead of saying something positive about the perceived speaker, simply add your own thoughts. Respect and privacy, everything shared in confidence needs to stay in confidence here, and honor the decision of the group. So I usually ask with a show of hands, do people agree to keep these agreements? And yes, thank you very much. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Next slide. Finally, as a reminder for the group, on December 9th, the commission agreed to a set of interim community standards and how we treat each other and want to be treated. So I'm glad that we had a moment to review those with each other. So now we'll have introductions. Please be brief, take 2 minutes at most for your introductions. Please be willing to be facilitated. So allow me as your facilitator to gently move you to the next PAC member if we exceed in time. Include some common details. So at minimum, name, relevant affiliation, and one reason why you want to be on the bylaws subcommittee. So I will just introduce myself first, just to kind of set the precedence. And then I'll ask the co-chairs to introduce themselves. And then whoever goes first or whoever goes second, please pass it on to someone in your group or someone in the group. My name is Ayumide Nixie. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns. I will be your facilitator for this evening. I'm very happy to be here as I believe that police accountability is important. And I will move it on to Jason.
I'm Jason Renault. I'm a member of this committee and a member of the commission, and I'm the co-chair of this group. Catherine.
Thanks. I'm Catherine McDowell. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a member of the commission, and I wanted to be on this subcommittee because my training is as a lawyer, and I've served on a number of nonprofit boards and commissions, so I have some experience in both drafting and interpreting bylaws. So I will turn it over to Connie.
Hi, I'm Connie Wan. I use she, her pronouns. I'm also a member of the committee and not only find and feel that police accountability is one of the most important topics that we face here in Portland, but also being a member of the subcommittee to discuss and create how the bylaws go is also an important piece to participating in this committee. So with that, I will pass it over to Dan.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Dan Handelman. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a member of the group Portland Cop Watch, but I'm also a commissioner and on the subcommittee because I think it's important for us to set up the rules that we can follow so we all have a basic agreement about how to move forward. And I'll call on Commissioner Debbie Iona.
Hi, I'm Debbie Iona, she, her. I got involved in this issue through my membership with the League of Women Voters of Portland. And I asked to be on this subcommittee because I've, over the years, attended a number of different city committees and commissions and sort of got a sense of how they operate under different types of rules and hope that maybe that'll be helpful. And then, let's see, who's left? Angie?
Yes. Hi, I'm Angie Tomlinson. Thanks, Debbie. I appreciate that. I used to work with your daughter over at BES anyway. My name is Angie Tomlinson, and I have worked in environmental regulation for about 25 years, but I've also worked on a lot of nonprofit type boards, mostly related to PPS, so nothing related to this subject. I'm very honored to be on this committee, on the commissioner on this committee, because I think this work is really important. And I wanted to be on this subcommittee because I am familiar with bylaws and how tangled up they can be, and making them as clear as possible so everybody can follow the rules as easily as possible. So thank you. I don't know, because I don't see Samir over here yet, or who else should I pass it on to? I'm not sure.
We have a committee member in the audience that needs to be over in the panelists. Samib Hosseini.
Samir.
No, Simab.
Yeah, I see that CMOB. I don't see him. Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Sorry.
Thank you.
Hello.
There they go.
So Angie, would you select a
Yes, Monica, CMOM has his microphone off, so CMOM it is.
Greetings, everybody. Yeah, thank you. Navigating COVID with children at home. So yes, my name is Simab Husseini, he, him, his, and I am actually interested in being part of this bylaws committee simply because, well, it's a major function as to how we move, and hoping to see an efficient process by being involved in it so we can meet our 18-month goal on time or earlier. Bylaws will be incredibly important as to how we efficiently move through this process. Thank you.
And I believe, Monica, you're the last person that needs to be.
Hi. Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me. Monica Arce. I am a commissioner in the Police Accountability Committee. I'm here to listen and observe and learn about bylaws and legal jargon. I'm actually in the other subcommittee, so I want to see how this goes today and see what I can learn for the next time.
I believe that is all of you, all 8. Thank you for your introductions. Just again, want to reintroduce myself. I am meeting Nixie, she, her, they, them pronouns. And just also wanted just to let you know that I'm here facilitating this space today to help create a place where people feel safe in doing this work. And oh, I think the other co-chair is joining us now. Great. So we'll wait for her to get here and then she can introduce herself as well. So just give a pause here. Okay, well, we'll circle back around when she comes in. We'll just kind of move forward with our discussion today. We'll ask everyone to speak as often as they want to, but take no more than a minute. Oh, that was for your introductions, which you all did greatly. So let's just go into our next slide. Thank you. What are the values that should be reflected in the internal processes of police accountability and commission? So some examples are that are transparency of all decisions in the public to the public, processes which ensure equity between members, timelines to achieve the commission's timeline of task, inclusion of Portlanders who are normally not a part of the community safety and policing discussion. So those are just some examples. The question is, who would like to start this discussion? And move it forward.
Ms. Facilitator, this is Dan Handelman. I'm seeing that there's some examples already on the slide that we
Yes.
might just read into the record. And
Yes, I
also,
did.
I have
did
the
read them.
agenda in front of me, and I'm not seeing this on the agenda. Is this the principles for internal governance discussion?
Yes, the internal processes. Yes, it is. And I can read the examples again if needed. So transparency of all decisions to the public, processes which ensure equity between members, timelines, or excuse me, timeliness to achieve the commission's timelines of tasks. So making sure that we're doing this on time, inclusion of Portlanders who are normally not a part of the community safety and policing or policing decisions. So how about if we discuss or just start about inclusion of Portlanders and what kind of values our bylaws will reflect as we're doing this process, or as all y'all are doing this process?
Would it help if we I know that there were some bylaws, some example bylaws sent out. I don't know if they were sent out with this meeting, but would it help if we had those example bylaws to try to have a starting base from? I don't know. I don't know if these questions are too big right now. anyway, I'll let somebody else talk.
Let's see here. Let me go and I'll pull some of that up because we do have,
Looks like Catherine wants to say something.
please, Catherine. Oh, I didn't see your hand, sorry.
Mhm.
Thank you. And I was just going to say that I think all of these are great goals. And I guess the one that seems like we might want to add to it is just it strikes me, and I think this comment has been made in a previous meeting too, that to the extent our recommendations can be consensus recommendations strongly supported by all members of the commission, I think the more powerful and persuasive they will be ultimately to the city council when presented to them. So I think that is a specific issue before us as we draft the bylaws, which is how to do our decision making to encourage consensus. So that's, I think, one that should definitely be on there. I also liked the examples. So to me, if we included processes designed to achieve consensus if possible, in addition to the principles you had, that seems like a pretty good list to me. And then I do like the idea of pulling up that example template that we had, and somebody had annotated it with like decision points for us to review. I thought that was a particularly helpful addition as well.
Yeah, let me pull that up for y'all because I have that. That's right here. Wait, is this
And I just saw our other co-chair pop up, so perhaps we can
introduce her?
take a moment.
Yes.
Hi, all. Do we have a moment for me to do my introduction?
Yes,
Hi.
please. Yes.
Hi. Hi. So sorry I'm late. I'm Lavisa Lloyd. So nice to meet you. Yeah, quick introduction. I'm a litigation paralegal with a criminal civil rights background, and and I'm very happy to be here and so excited. And I think I may be representative of one of the issues we're going to have possibly going forward, which is that I just got the time for this meeting wrong. And then I had a few technical issues, but I'm so glad that I'm here with everyone now.
I'd actually like to ask for a little bit of support from one of our city staff. Can you pull up, Samira, can you pull up the document that the bylaws outline for the group, because they are asking for it. Is this what you were asking for? I just want to make sure that this is what you were talking about, Catherine. Perfect. Okay. Oh yeah, and then also these files are in the chat if you want to pull it up on your own computer to scan through or go through them as well. Should I call, how about Jason? Would you like to start this discussion, please?
Sure. We've had some planning meetings about these bylaws and thought that the best strategy for getting through and getting to some functionality with the other subcommittee and the full commission would be to look at not all of these bylaws and not other bylaws today, but just the bylaws that are necessary in order to begin to function. And we're thinking of doing that because there's such a interest in getting started, and because we are under a timeline. And so this will expedite our process quite a bit. I really don't know what these comments are on here, but if we can roll up to the top. The first question that's sort of an open question in the bylaws is the frequency of meetings. And Samir pointed out the other day that that number is actually listed in the instructions for this commission, and it's to be at least 12 times each calendar year. And then we could suggest a number of frequency of meetings for subcommittees, but that also might be in the general operating instructions for the organization, for the commission, and not necessarily in the bylaws. So perhaps we could see if we can have general agreement that will at least fill in this blank with the instructions for the commission, that we have at least 12 meetings a year of the commission. Hands up for general agreement.
It looks like everyone. Looks like there's consensus.
Thank you. Thank you. So the second item that we looked at that we really thought was vital, and I'll try to go through these as quickly as possible, but it's really one of the most complicated. And that's what is on the agenda list as voting thresholds. We also call that the quorum. And there's some complexity to this because as we look at quorum, we also have to think about how many people are on this commission or on the subcommittees, and that number will change over time. It may shrink, and once it shrinks, we may add more. We haven't decided that yet, but the number will change. So Samir, I'd like to call on you to speak a little bit about the math here.
Yeah, just a moment. Yeah, so it's just a question of how you define a majority. If you define it as more yeses than nos, then it ends up being there's no distinction when there's an even number of people present, but if there's an odd number of people present at a specific meeting or on a specific subcommittee, there's a distinction. Just saying 50% plus one means you would need, out of 19 people, you'd actually need 11 as opposed to 10. So you need a 10-9 vote would fail in that scenario. So just defining majority as more yeses than nos is sort of the way to achieve the same goal there. And the reason for that is if you have an odd number, 19, for example, then 50% of that is 9.5, plus one is 10.5, you'd round up to 11. So, yeah.
And that's speaking of voting, and we heard about consensus a little earlier, and that'll be the next question, but this is around quorum. And let's just open it up and have some discussion about quorum. Let's make it about 15 minutes and see where we get with that. Debbie?
So you could decide that the quorum is a majority of the people who are currently on the commission. So, say 2 people have to drop off and we have 18, then it would be, 9 plus 1 or 10. But then if you just want to talk about quorum, I'll stop right there. If you want to talk about voting on top of that, I think the one thing we have to be careful about is if we say you have a quorum, then when you do the vote, is it a majority of the people who are in the room, or are you going to talk about a majority of people who are your full membership if everybody was there? I'm pretty sure I've seen the PCCP get hung up on that. And I personally think it should be a majority of the people who are in the room, as long as you have a quorum. But so that's an idea right there to think about. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Clarification, people in the room, meaning everyone in the room?
No, sorry. I mean, of the members, of the members who were present at the meeting. To me, then if you have a majority, if you're going to do a voting method, and because I prefer the consensus approach. But if you decide you're going to, like, if there is no consensus and you have to take a vote because that's your only option, then I think if you have a quorum, say there were 20 of us, and then say 11 show up to the meeting, then you would need 6 people to vote to pass something. I hope that makes sense. Is that, yeah.
Thank you, Debbie.
Sima? Yeah, I'm on complete board with Debbie on this. I believe I've called it an assembly rule in my past, where it's making sure that those that are actually present are voting members that are present are the whole voting members that will be voting for that issue. We're not holding out based on those that are absent for that meeting. So kind of like an assembly rule.
Thank you. Connie?
Yeah, I agree. I'm on a few other boards and such, and the assembly rule, or I think deciding what our threshold is for a quorum. So if we need, 1/3 of the commissioners present to achieve a quorum, and then within the quorum, we can make any decisions on majority rule from there. I think is that what we're trying to figure out is like, what do we need to, what would be the threshold to achieve quorum?
Thank you, Connie. Other comments, Dan?
So I sent the chairs some ideas, and my thought about quorum is pretty much what's already been said, that it should be 50% of seated members plus 1. So if we do lose members, that we're not going to be held up having a meeting because we can't meet quorum. So the quorum should go down as the number of people on the commission goes down. In terms of voting, I agree with those who are saying we should have a consensus when we can. I also think that when we can't get a consensus, it would be better to set a threshold. I'm proposing 60% instead of 50% plus 1, because we're trying to value the diversity of the voices here, and 50% plus 1 shows that it was a very contentious and very tight vote. If we can reach 60%, at least we show that a supermajority of the commission was in favor of the proposal. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
So quorum is just in order to make a decision, we need a certain number of people in the room. And voting is a little bit different. But interesting idea, Dan, to raise the number of people who need to be in the room to reflect a greater majority.
No, just to be clear, I was saying that a quorum can be 50% plus 1 of the membership, but the vote should be 60% if we can't come to consensus.
Got it. Dan, would you talk a little bit about how that quorum number formula changes as the seats, as we have open seats?
Sure. I think that Samir started touching on this, but so I'm just going to do the quorum issue first, and I'll get to the 60% question. I mean, we seem to be talking about both things at the same time. So just to be clear, the quorum question, if we have 20 people, it's 11, 19 or 20 people, we need 11 people to have a quorum, so we can do our business. If there are 17 to 18 of us, there needs to be 10. There's 15 to 16, it'll be 9, and so on, as there are fewer and fewer members. But I hope we never get it down to that point. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and if I can pause you and ask for a show of hands that have general agreement with Dan's math, that if there's 20, it should be 11, etc. A show of hands if we're in agreement that would be a sufficient quorum.
Can I ask, just to clarify, this is in order to have the meeting?
in order to make a decision.
In order to make a decision. Okay.
Yeah, sometimes I've been at meetings where they don't have a quorum, but they still, you know, they discuss sort of issues of importance to them, to the committee and the public, but they can't vote on anything or decide anything. That doesn't mean they can't keep talking.
And just to clarify, we're talking about 50% plus one in this case, right? We're 11 out of 20.
Yes.
And just to be specific too, it would be make it easier just for everyone that if we just focus on quorum first and then go to voting.
Thanks. And I see a pretty good show of hands for quorum at 50%. Ms. Ayomide, do you count the vote or count an agreement?
I see, if you can use your raise hand. Thank you. I think
Do we use 50% plus one on this?
yeah, we need 50% plus one. I see almost everybody's hands. How do you, 1, 2, 4, I don't
No,
see.
I can
Thank
never
you.
remember how to do this.
Thank you. I'm like, I'm not seeing everyone's hands and that, okay.
Okay, now that your hands are all up, please take
Yep.
them down again because we'll
Yep.
ask for another show of hands in a moment
Thank you.
because we are chugging through this.
Yeah, you guys don't.
That was going to be 30 minutes of discussion, I thought. So
Should we
very
agree
happy.
to raise hands either physically or on the screen also to create unity on the hand raising?
Sure.
If
May I
that's too
suggest,
detailed.
using the hand raising icon?
Oh, there
Thank
it is. Thank you. Point out
Great.
to me.
Fabulous. Yeah, that
So-
way I can see it all and I can say yes or no too.
So the idea here is to just get these basic principles in an agreement. And then Lovisa and I will go away and whoever wants to join us will come back on the 18th with real text for you to look at. And there's parts of this template bylaws, which are just fill it in because we know it's not something we can really make a values-based decision on. So this is really helpful having this input because these are questions that you really can't guess how people feel about.
So there's a question in the chat, Jason. Should we address quorum of subcommittees before we move on to voting?
Sure, I think we could do that. I don't see any problem with that. We haven't addressed whether we will have subcommittees or not. But since we're here in quorum, is there any objection to using the 50% plus one for quorum for subcommittees? Any objection to that? See hands for any objection.
I don't see any hands for objection.
This requires good attendance to make this work. If you're going to have bad attendance, you want to have this quorum number be very different. If you're expecting people to be no-shows, and you know, after a year of waiting, we have everyone still on board. This is kind of amazing. So I think we're going to have excellent attendance and excellent participation by everyone. Really excited to be here. So let's talk about voting.
There's another question. There's another question in here.
Oh, sorry.
We need to define membership in subcommittees, perhaps.
We have that a little bit lower in the agenda.
That's what I figured. And then just to clarify for a question, just more questions about quorum. You've decided what the threshold will be, so it'll be 50% plus one instead of 2/3 majority. I'm just clarifying. What should be the full commission membership spot or the filled spots, which may be lower than vacancy?
Well, that's a question that will come on a little bit later, I think, when we talk about removal of members.
Okay.
And Lovisa is going to address that.
And how does quorum change if someone leaves in has a leave in absence? So just
Let's talk about that when we talk about leave of absence a little bit later. but I think we'll get these questions answered. So we were able to think of 3 ways to come to decisions in a group, by consensus, by majority, or a hybrid of some sort. I'd like to open it up to discussion of your experience and your thoughts about this group and how we make decisions, and remembering Catherine's comment earlier, and just open the discussion for, let's say, 15 minutes. Catherine.
So, it seems to me that maybe we could break down the question of operating on modified consensus or not, and then assuming if we can agree to a modified consensus approach, then determine what voting requirement would be necessary, assuming we can't reach consensus. So in other words, I'm just trying to break it down, maybe to see if we can agree on a modified consensus approach, and then if so, determine what the voting requirement should be if we cannot reach consensus.
Is anyone hardcore, it's got to be consensus or no way? Anybody consensus or nothing?
I see
Good time
no
to speak
hands-
up.
I see no hands up at the moment.
Is anyone a majority or nothing?
I see
Sophia.
Sophia's hand. And
Sophia,
Connie as well.
can we hear from Sophia?
I was making an accident by putting my hand up, but since I'm on, I
Welcome.
do not agree with consensus or nothing. But I do think consensus, I do feel the consensus is a way for everyone to actually talk through, instead of someone just hard, putting on the brakes. Consensus really makes us all think about why we're doing it and how important is it to disagree. Is it that important to hold the train, or is it something you just don't quite agree with? And it's not a train stopper. Sorry for my niece talking in the background, but yeah, that's my thought on consensus, but I'd like to hear from everybody else.
Connie, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm wondering if we need to have like a decision between one or the other. Like, I think the hybrid might be a good path to consider, that like we try to reach consensus, but if we cannot, then we assign a majority rule that is at a certain percentage that would be the majority of us in a certain amount of consensus.
Well, there are people who are consensus only, who really can't abide anything outside of consensus. And I just want to make sure, see if we can just move the conversation to a consensus hybrid. Does that feel safe? Hands up if you move to the consensus hybrid model. Sorry.
So I see lots of hands. It looks like it's almost everybody except for, oh, there, Monica as well. I also would like to ask if before we go into like kind of basically voting immediately, that we just have a little bit more discussion on some of our topics, just to make sure that we're really getting everybody's voice heard. But it looks like everybody is down for the hybrid consensus. Looks like there was a consensus with that.
Can I ask a quick question? I came in a bit late and I think you guys did some definitions before I was here, and I was wondering what people's thoughts or definitions of consensus were, or if you came to any conclusions about the definition of consensus.
Oh, yes.
To my mind, I've traditionally thought of consensus as meaning no strong opposition, not necessarily 100% agreement. I think, some people say 80% is a pretty good threshold. But if other people have thoughts about their definition of consensus. I would love to hear them.
The League of Women Voters operates on a consensus model for our, when we do studies and then try to reach positions. And we sort of call it in shorthand, the sense of the group. So it's like, you know, can everybody in the room more or less agree to whatever the statement is that, you know, you come to. So some people maybe will be a little bit, you know, not quite, but yeah, they're almost there. And that counts for us as consensus. So yeah.
I saw Monica and then Dan after that. Sorry,
Yeah, I have when I hear consensus and I hear consensus when it comes from a group coming up with an opinion, I think it makes the opinion stronger. So I like the idea of our group having a strong message that there was, you know, that everybody had thought about this and has presented this thought happily with the entire group behind it. So I like the hybrid model in that if we don't reach consensus, we do need to move forward. And I like the idea of a 60 or a 70% vote to pass something, because I think 50%, I feel a little bit uncomfortable about half the group not wanting to vote on something and still moving forward makes me feel a little uncomfortable.
Dan and then Debbie and then Catherine.
Yeah, I think to me there's two parts of consensus. The first part is developing what you're trying to vote on. So in Robert's rules, somebody makes a proposal and then they get to control whether or not something's a friendly amendment or not. But in consensus, I think you start talking about an idea and then it goes around the room, everybody puts input into it, and then either somebody puts that into words and says, this is what I'm hearing, or the chairs do that. And I'm hoping that's kind of what we can use our chairs for, is to take what everybody around the table said and say, okay, this is what I'm hearing for this. Can everybody agree to that? And then the agreement part, the consensus part, is either everybody agrees with it or they can live with it, right? So it's not that they disagree with it, it's that they can live with it. So it's called standing aside in traditional consensus model. But if somebody wants to block it, I mean, if they feel very strongly that they don't agree at all, then we might have to, that's where we might have to either move to the voting that we've been talking about, or, we really want to try to hear out if somebody feels that strongly about something, give them some time to see if there's something we can do to work whatever it is into our idea. But sometimes it's an either or and you can't do that. Thank you.
I believe that was Debbie and then Catherine. Did I say that right? Yes.
Yeah. I'd be in preparation for this meeting, I looked at some bylaws or charters for some of the other city advisory committees. And there's this one public involvement advisory committee that used to be with the Office of Neighborhood Involvement, now the Office of Civic Life. And they operate on a consensus model. And then if they couldn't really come to full consensus, they required a 2/3 vote. So that sort of reminds me of Dan's suggestion that, we have a threshold that's a little bit higher than 50% or a lot higher, whatever we decide, than 50% +1. So that kind of seems like we would end up with some pretty strong statements if we did that, where we primarily use consensus. And then if we couldn't come to consensus, we had a pretty high threshold on the vote.
Catherine? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. My comment was along the same lines. I looked at the charter committee's definition of modified consensus decision-making and thought it was pretty good. It talks about initially that the commission will make decisions collaboratively. All viewpoints will be honored, respected, and have appropriate time for consideration. And then it has a step-by-step process to make a decision on any proposal. The commission may receive informational briefings. Commissioners will deliberate, and the facilitator will use the stack method to identify who speaks and when, and encourage participation by all commissioners. Then after deliberation, commissioners will identify whether they are supportive, neutral, or in opposition. And if all commissioners are supportive or neutral, the proposal or matter passes. if any commissioners in opposition, commissioners will take a roll call vote. So that's how they define modified consensus decision-making, and I thought it was a pretty good definition.
Thanks.
Okay.
I can appreciate the fact that you guys are actually trying to reach and look for the nuance between the votes. And I think that's going to be something that we need to look at as we move forward. So I'm interested in hearing more about, rather than just doing a 50+1 type thing or whatnot, but finding a way where we can actually get a consensus model. I'm actually learning a lot from listening to this part right here. And I think it would be better for us as a group to be able to find out and better discuss, find reasons to create more discussion as to finding neutrality or disagreeing with the process to create something that actually works and that we're all mostly kind of sold on.
So it sounds like a modified consensus model is what we should be looking at, and that we should strive for consensus and have the chairs all be aware about, maybe get some coaching, perhaps from our new facilitator, on strategies for reaching consensus. That is, especially if we have an opinion ourselves as chairs, or when the conversation gets hot, we sometimes can forget and run over people, or make it come to a bad decision. And not only we're achieving consensus, but consensus will bring us to more of a coalescence as a group, where we have a common understanding and a common belief about things. And I think that's a very powerful developmental process that we're going to experience. So if it's okay with everyone, I think we'll proceed and let's have a vote on the modified consensus model and send Lovisa and I off to, and anyone else who wants to come with us.
I just want to pause you for a moment, Jason.
Sorry.
I think our staff has a question.
Oh.
Hi, yes. I wanted to ask if anyone felt differently about the vote requirement for the final, the final sending of the code package to City Council. So in the Charter Review Commission's bylaws, they require 15 votes. So they recommend things to change the charters. It's slightly different. 15 votes are required to send it directly to the voters. 11 to 14 out of 20 are required to send it to the City Council, who could then choose to send it to the voters. That's their requirement, and it's hard numbers. It's not percentages. It's 11 to 14 or 15 plus. Not suggesting that in any way, just mentioning that as an example of what I'm talking about. Does anyone feel that the threshold should be different in any way for when the final code package is developed by this commission to send to City Council? In our case, it goes to City Council.
Dan?
I think that number is written into the city code about the Charter Commission, actually. So that's one reason they have that in there. I pasted into the chat, so you're saying, should we have a different threshold for voting? We didn't decide on a threshold of what we do if we can't reach consensus. I made a proposal. I said 60%, somebody else said 70%. So I put what the 60% numbers look like into the chat. Hopefully everybody can see that. But for 60%, if we have 20 members, that's 12. If we have 18 or 19 members, that's 11. We have 16 or 17 members, that's 10. We have 15 members, it's 9. That's the only one that's by itself. We have 13 or 14 members, that's 8. If we have 11 or 12 members, it's 7. If we're down to 10 members at some point, we only need 6 to pass something if we can't come to consensus. So that's what the numbers look like for a 60% vote. That's my comment.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions?
Oh,
Lovisa.
Lavisa, yeah.
Yep.
I think my comment is thanks for doing that math, Dan, and that I would love, this is just me, well, personally, just as a commissioner, I would be very glad. I've heard some support in the room for having a relatively high number on the vote if it comes to that in the modified consensus situation. And I would express my personal support for not going below 60%.
Anyone else? Monica?
I would feel comfortable even with saying 80%, just because I think it strengthens the final outcome. I think if we can get 8 out of 10 people to vote on it, I think that's a very strong argument.
Well, I guess the dilemma is that there's a point at which we may not be able to make decisions. And I don't know this group well enough to be able to know that we can reach that level of agreement about anything. 80% is pretty high. We can't get 80% of America to put a face mask on. Seems obvious to me, but.
How do you say your name? I want to make sure I'm saying
CMOB.
it right. It is CMOB. Okay.
Like you see me mobbing.
I just want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. CMOB.
Absolutely. Thank you. I agree. Just to even add to what Jason was saying, I don't think we can get half of America to agree 80% of it to mask up. But yeah, I would 80% would be a high bar, but I understand the feeling and the intention behind that is obviously to come as close as to consensus as a group cohesively. I look between 60 to 70. I think Lavisa mentioned earlier a 70% threshold. I'm all for that. Feels high to me as it is. I think 60% is good, but you know, maybe somewhere between there, 60 and 70%. It'd be nice. I would hope that a lot of us over here build that trust with one another to the point where we can maybe set a little bit of a higher bar, as well as a positive template and for future commissions that make decisions in the city. Set a high bar for cohesion and trust amongst one another, and the need to be able to understand each other and create dialogue, and the acceptance that we're able to, you know, sometimes not necessarily get our way, but you know, we had at least a shot to be able to sway opinion and do it honorably, you know, and not yuck each other's yum, if that were to be community rule. But yeah, I'm all for having a decent consensus. I think 80% might be high, but it's beautiful to imagine.
Debbie, and then I have a comment in the chat from Sophia.
So yeah, I mean, I understand what Jason's saying. I mean, if we really make a sincere effort to hear everybody's voices and really try to come up with decisions that have broad support in the group, but we just can't do it, then I mean, there's certain things we're just going to have to, you know, come to a decision on, certain elements of the oversight system that are going to have to be decided one way or the other. So yeah, I'm a little worried about having too high of a percentage, and also want to just go back to the example of the Charter Commission. I mean, it's a lot of power to have this group, this small group, I mean, 20 citizens, or be able to send something directly to the ballot. And that's, I think, why their threshold is so high, because what we develop is going to go to city council. And so, there's going to be more conversation there and adjustments to the proposal that we come up with. So, so I don't think we need to be as high as the Charter Commission is on sending something to the ballot.
Okay, I'm gonna read, are you finished, Debbie? I just want to make sure. Okay, I'm gonna read Sophia's comment. How about 75% or 75? That is why it is important to discuss the issue and listen to each other. Perspective seeking is very helpful. And then I saw Louisa and then Catherine again. And then I just would like to put out that we're a little bit over an hour into our meeting, and we still have a few more things to go through. And I want to give you all a break, one for the interpreters and also for your own bio functions. So maybe after this round of questions, if we haven't come to a consensus, that we go into small groups, or that we figure out a way for y'all to go into small groups and decide that, and we can move forward with what's rest of on our agenda.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll try to be brief. I think sort of two separate numbers here, the number for consensus versus if consensus fails, and if we're doing modified consensus, the number for voting. And the number that I gave earlier was 80% for consensus. That's 80% of people supporting and 20% of people standing aside. It's not 80% in favor and 20% against. If anyone was against, that would trigger, I think, the voting, and that would be at a different threshold. So I just want to clarify those are two different things.
Thank you for that, Louisa. Catherine?
So I think that was really helpful clarification for me. I personally am worried about setting thresholds too high because I just feel like our imperative is to produce a product and get it to the city council in a timely way. And so I wonder, my sense is we could, within our recommendations, also indicate all of this is consensus with the exception of this provision in which we, had to vote, and here's the vote. Just so I don't mind being transparent about that at all. In some ways that points out this is a hard issue, and this is an issue on which reasonable minds could disagree. So my personal view would be to stick with the 60% or maybe slightly higher threshold in terms of you can't reach consensus, you need to vote, then be at a threshold that allows you to move forward.
And then Monica.
I really like that. I think that's great. I think the goal is consensus. If goal can't be reached, then it's very transparent, and we inform what the vote ended up being and what the percentages were, and just be upfront with that. I like that. And I'd be happy with 60-70% in that case.
I saw Dan waving of fingers, but also see your hand raised before we go in. Is there anything else?
Yeah, it's called twinkling. It's just to support what was being said. But I just want to also add that it was circulated to us when we were first joined the commission. There's some kind of city policy on minority reports. I really hope that we come up with a commission where we don't have to have a separate minority report. We went through that in 2000. I can talk about that some other time. But instead, I'd like to see what they do actually in the current police review board, which is, I don't want to explain the whole system right now, but anyways, it's a internal body to the police. They say 3 commissioners thought this and 2 commissioners thought this, or they're not called commissioners, but board members. So we could include in the report the minority opinion and why, what they thought, and that could help inform the council when they're looking over whatever we decide or propose.
Okay. I think this may be a good place to pause, give people a break to absorb all that we've just discussed about consensus. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. So it's 6:38 now. Thank you. So let's move on to our next item. Well, before we go into membership changes, I'd like to go into some operating rules and maybe some officers and subcommittee stuff first, just to hear another voice in the room.
We have some urgency around the other issues.
As far as membership changes, yes, I recognize that. All of them are very urgent. Let's see what we got here. We did a little bit over voting, but we'll need to come back to that as well. As far as the group is concerned, what would you like to hear first? Would you like to hear about membership changes or officers and subcommittees first?
I think if our co-chairs are concerned about the membership changes, that's a good place to start.
I see Jason is definitely concerned. What about you, Lavisa? How are you feeling about that?
I do think membership changes are probably the most pertinent thing for us to talk about.
I just want to make sure that everybody was on the same page. Perfect.
Definitely.
So, all right. I think, were you going to lead us on that, Jason?
Lovisa.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So it's unavoidable that over the course of this commission, folks will most likely there will be some situations that arise where it's possible someone may need to or wish to or choose to resign from the commission. Someone may become ineligible to serve. We already have a situation where we have a commissioner who has not been able for medical reasons to engage. And so we've been talking through some of the possible options in terms of just what our options will look like around under what conditions a member either removes themselves or is removed from the commission. So, and obviously we would love to hear from everyone just what your thoughts and what your ideas around this are. I see we have some questions. If you want to speak to any of these questions, you certainly can. I can just tell you briefly, there's sort of 4 rough ideas that I can posit around how this might work. First is resignation. Someone may choose to resign. Second, a leave of absence is something we'd like to bring up as a possible way to avoid people having to resign and having to decide whether, we replace that person or go on without them. That would be sort of a predefined option. There will be situations where somebody is unable to serve, they get hit by a bus, or one example was the possibility that their spouse becomes a police officer or some other disqualifying event happens. And then the fourth is like the most extreme administrative removal. This would probably be, in the case of like gross misconduct, you punch someone in the nose or something that's like, clearly way outside the boundaries of what the group accepts as reasonable behavior. So those are just some ideas, but if people have other ideas, other thoughts, we would love to hear them. So I'd like to open it up for that.
I see Connie's hand.
Yeah, so I guess to sort of back up for a minute, is the number of commissioners based on anything? Like, do we need to maintain a certain number of membership in order? I know we discussed quorum, but like, I think that might help sort of create a framework around how we would approach membership changes and like the way that we need to look at it as far as like if we need to maintain a certain number of members.
That's a great question. Have you guys already started a parking lot or a list of questions to be answered? And Samir, if you know, or Jason, if you know the answers to these questions, please feel free to jump in. Otherwise, thank you so much, Connie, and we should move on to the next person who has a comment.
I saw Dan's hand. I wasn't sure, Samir, if we had a parking lot yet.
Not yet. Please feel free to start one.
Dan, you had your hand up?
Oh, I saw Jason's hand too, but do you want to go, Jason?
Oh, was Jason first?
Okay. Yeah, the number 20 comes from the city council resolution that created our body. And there's something else about that I want to talk about before we leave tonight. Section 4 of the draft or the framework bylaws that we have is supposed to say how long the terms are and so forth. And I went through the council resolution that passed on July 28 last year, and it says there's 20 seats. It outlines that there are going to be 5 seats representing different aspects of the community, including community advocates for people harmed by police brutality, which is the quarter that I'm in. And so, in theory, if somebody leaves, we should need to fill it with somebody from that same category that's described in the resolution. So I don't know if that's up to us to make that decision or council. So that's where that number comes from, the 20. While I've got the floor, in terms of leave of absence, I'm not opposed to the idea of somebody taking a leave of absence so that they can come back without resigning, but I do think that we should consider them not a seated member during the time that they're on absence so that we're not held up from getting to our quorums. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
So Connie, your question raises all sorts of problems in the bylaws and in operating instructions, because there are not clear instructions about how we replace members, how we add new members. There is an additional list of, or there were additional applications that were submitted in early this spring. We don't know, I don't think those people have been contacted since early spring. Some may fit into these categories that Dan just mentioned, some might not. So I would table that question for today because we don't need new members now, but that's going to be a complicated question for this group to understand and answer to get. And we're probably just going to need some help from our city attorney in that area.
Thank you. I did see CMOB initially, but then you put your hand down. So should I Debbie first and then CMOB, since you are putting your hand back up again, please.
On the leave of absence, I definitely support that idea. I mean, it seems like it's nice for people who have some sort of issue that is of the defined term to be able to step away. But I noticed in some of the charters and bylaws I looked at before the meeting, and even if somebody just misses a meeting, like an excused absence because they, have family visiting from out of town or whatever, that there's an obligation for a person who steps away for one meeting or say several months to get up to speed on what happened while they were gone. So I guess since we have these recordings, they could watch these recordings, or they could, talk to staff and get caught up. So I think that might be something, if we decide to have a leave of absence, to put that note in there that if people do need to step away, that they get back up to date on everything.
Thank you, Debbie. CMAB.
Yeah, I do. As far as like, departure and how that works, I think we would probably have to discuss, get in depth about that. I think the city of Portland has a chapter on code of ethics, as well as a guide for volunteer boards and commissions on ethics and whatnot. But from what I've gone through, I don't see anything about someone transitioning away or decisions to be made regarding departure or transitions of members of boards and commissions. So definitely something to expand upon. I'll put the links in here for what I do have available.
Jason, I think you were next.
The way that removal usually happens is that people stop attending, stop participating, or that's often the way. And so what maybe a question we could answer is what level of attendance do we want in these commission meetings and in the subcommittee meetings? This group, as I mentioned before, is really interested in this subject, and we've come a long way to get here to reach these conclusions. And as time goes on, we're going to become more and more valuable and less replaceable. So I would posit that we should have a very high standard of attendance and have quite a bit of language around here so that it doesn't become terribly uncomfortable, such as the leave of absence. If you're going to be, ill or traveling or not able to participate, to leave. I really like the idea of having a catch-up meeting so that people can not just walk in cold. But some of these committees, they let you miss 3 or 4 meetings, and then at the end of the year, they count it up, and you've not been very active. I would ask that this group have almost a zero tolerance for missing meetings. Now, if people have a problem, they call Samir and say, I can't make it to the meeting. That's an excused absence. But if people just blow it off, we shouldn't have that. We're doing important work here.
CMOB, and then I saw something in the Q&A that I think might be relevant for this conversation.
Oh, I just forgot to lower my hand from last time.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In the Q&A,
Okay.
I just wanted to add a little I think this might help. It says Exhibit A. Oh, did I lose it? Sorry. Oh, it disappeared. So never mind.
Answered section.
Yeah, look under answered on the Q&A. It's there at the very end, what Sarah said.
Oh, thank you. I've never used the Q&A before. Answered. Can the panel see all its members? I'm sorry, I do not see where you guys see it.
It says Exhibit A to the resolution creating the PAC says, in quotes, upon appointment, commission members may only be removed by city council.
Yes, that's what it did say, but it's not showing up on my side.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's what I was going to answer. That's what the question I was going to put out for everyone, or the answer, I should say. Thank you.
So I wonder if it's possible to let Sarah speak, since she's from the city attorney's office, and say, so then what do we do if people just quit showing up? Do we report that to city council then? And it's up to them to tell the person that they, if you can't show up, you're off.
Am I unmuted now? Yes. Hi. I'm Sarah Ames. I'm a deputy city attorney. I'm new to the city attorney's office, and I have been assigned to help support this commission and your important work. I would want to double check. That seems a very clear statement that commission members may only be removed by city council. They each appointed members. And so I think that they really wanted to be involved and not have people being removed. I believe that Jason also mentioned the other piece of the membership question that was that the final commission membership must consist of 5 people from communities that have historically been over-policed and 5 from organizations that provide support to historically over-policed communities, then with a little bit further definition. So I think Jason's point was that you want to watch if you start having people resign, that you continue to have the adequate membership from those 2 groups, and that's 10 members at least representing those groups. So just some of these kind of the framework that's in the resolution and the attachment.
Well, perhaps for now we can, sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Perhaps for now we can say that we could have an expectation of this subcommittee, not a bylaw at this moment, but that the commission have an expectation of participation at a certain level.
I think that would be entirely appropriate. You do need people to attend consistently if you're going to get your work done. And, you know, you could certainly have Samir kind of checking in on people and asking them if they'd rather resign or if they're able to need to take a leave of absence if they're not attending appropriately.
CMOB put some information in the chat about the code of ethics for an elected official or employee. Do you want to just read that?
Oh yeah, this just what I was mentioning earlier as far as a guide from the city of Portland that's already encoded for as code of ethics for any elected official, employee, appointee to a board or commission or citizen authorized to act on behalf of the city of Portland. The official chapter and code is chapter 1.03 code of ethics for the city of Portland. Second link was a link, looks like a PowerPoint, which is a guide for volunteers, boards, and commissions from the city of Portland, Office of the Attorney.
Thanks, CMOB. Any other comments or questions? Oh, Dan?
Yeah, so I think I pulled this from another sample set of bylaws that we were given. But I think they were saying that the staff should be keeping attendance, and if there's people have a large number of absences, they can inform the. In that case, it was the commission. I didn't realize city council was the only one by the resolution who can remove people, but and I want to emphasize that what Jason was saying before about unexcused absences, I think excused absences should be considered differently from unexcused absences. I really think it's a good idea for us to have a quick way that if somebody is not willingly participating, that they're not holding that seat and making these quorum numbers impossible. That's going to make it really hard for us to conduct our business. And I don't know if the city council considered that when they wrote that into the resolution.
Thanks, Dan. I think we may, I'm not quite sure if we talked about this with regards to voting, but with regards to active members voting as opposed to inactive members voting. Does anyone have any strong feelings about numbers around that? Or around anything else related to this.
I saw Catherine's hand.
Yes, I know that there is a requirement in our charge that we give quarterly reports to the city council on how we're doing. And it may be that that's the vehicle to say we, have a member who has not met whatever requirements that we set out in the bylaws and, want to flag that for you as part of our report. So my sense is that, that's kind of an unusual requirement, that quarterly reporting, and that these could be tied up. It may be a way for us to get the city council in a timely way to replace members to keep the commission at its full complement.
Thank you, Catherine. Jason?
So active and inactive members, I'm going to jump in thinking that's alternates voting. That can people have an alternate vote for them? Say I'm not going to be here. Debbie, can you vote for me? Or can you have a proxy vote? I can't vote today, but my friend Rochelle will be here and she'll vote for me. And then also people on leave of absence, can they vote? And Dan was pointing out the problem of that, people popping in and out to vote. So those might be good criteria for us to think about at this moment.
Mr. Chair, just on a Mr. Co-Chair, just on the point of proxy voting, I was told under no uncertain circumstances that there is no proxy voting for this. That as a member of a group, I wanted to be able to send other members of Portland Cop Watch here in my place, and I was told that that's not allowed. So that's already been decided for us, and I think there's a section of the bylaws that's supposed to be about that question.
Samir, you put something in the chat saying that you'd advise against proxy and leave of absence votes. Did you want to comment?
CMOB, but my family name
sorry.
is Samir.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
CMOB, I meant that.
Yeah, no, but like I said, my family name is Samir, so it's pretty dope.
There we go.
But yeah, no, I would personally vote for having or encourage having a vote based on assembly of members.
In the template, the bylaws template, it does say proxy and absentee voting isn't allowed. I do remember reading that. And I saw, Dan, you had your hand up again. Nope. Okay.
Just forgot to put it down.
All right. And Debbie, you hands up now.
So I read here and there about no proxy voting, no absentee voting. You have to show up, right, and vote for yourself. But and I think that makes sense. But the one thing I would like to hear. So what would you define as an inactive member? When we've been talking about this, I can't quite. Is it somebody who's on a leave of absence who comes to a meeting and wants to participate? I mean, yeah, I'm confused about what that means, the inactive member.
Sure, Debbie, when I used this term just now, I did mean someone on a leave of absence.
Okay, good, thanks. Yeah, I just was trying to picture what those were. Okay, I get it, thanks, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, and just seeing the amount of time that we have.
We have 15 minutes, yep.
Yeah, that we have limited time. Is there a general agreement in the group that, I mean, obviously we have some homework to do on sort of the ins and outs of all of the rules that affect membership, but just in general, is there consensus around the idea of including a leave of absence as one possibility for members? And if everyone could use your raise hand feature. Or
Can you repeat that again?
looking to see if there is consensus around including a leave of absence, in which somebody would let Samir know ahead of time, hey, I'm going to need to take a week off, a month off, but I will come back as an active member. Yes, all right. And if does anyone feel strongly against that?
I am not seeing any opposing votes.
And I would add that provision that they should catch up on what happened during their absence before returning to, showing up and being part of the committee again.
I'm happy to volunteer that if anybody did have to take a leave of absence and catch up, I'd be one of those folks that I would love to, get in touch with and kind of go over some things if reviewing all the videos would be a little bit too much, but also highly recommend reviewing all the videos for the best nuances possible.
Thanks, Imam. All right. I think unless anyone has anything else pressing to say on this, I think we should move along to.
I have one more time. I just want to make sure that, you asked if we're okay with leave of absence. I would have said with a caveat that while they're on leave of absence, they don't count as part of the quorum. Okay, I see nodding heads. I'm hoping there's consensus on that.
Sure. Do we want to take one more quick vote with the understanding that people who are on leave of absence are considered inactive and are not eligible to vote at that time?
Yeah, and don't count towards the quorum.
And don't count towards the quorum.
That's a very key piece there. Yeah,
Yes.
We could get ourselves into a pretty deep hole.
It looks like everyone had agreed on that. So I'd say yes.
Thank you. All right, wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
So we have 15 minutes, and I know that there's text that y'all need to write, and I was going to suggest possibly going into small groups. Dan said he lets to leave in 5 minutes. So Catherine, I saw your hand up.
Sorry, it was left over from the vote.
Okay, because you're, thank you. Actually, I should say, take time to figure out some volunteering. So I saw that CMOB volunteered, and then to figure out groups for creating the text for the bylaws. And then Jason, I see your hands up.
Thanks. So Lovisa and I will be putting the text together for the bylaws, and we're welcoming anybody who wants to join us. Just send us an email and we will find a time to crank this out. I'd appreciate if we could have some time to hear from public.
Catherine, your hand was up too, or did you put it down?
I was just volunteering.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent.
It would be great if we had some of those volunteers now, just for public record.
Angie.
Volunteering, yeah, thank you.
And I saw Dan.
Dan.
And Debbie as well.
We now we're getting close to a public meeting number. The quorum of this group can't meet and discuss the business.
If you do it in small groups, so if you like pair off, so instead of having to worry about a quorum, you could break up into small groups instead. So maybe a couple people could go with you, Jason, and maybe some folks could go with Lovisa. That way it's smaller. And I see Samir, you had your hand up, so.
Thank you. Just to clarify, and this is based in part off of Dan's suggestion via email, as well as what Charter Review Commission did previously, but it's that on each of the separate subsections, it would be a small group of 2 or 3 that has absolutely no decision-making authority. Their job is to take the concepts discussed in this meeting and convert it to text to be given back to the full group this subcommittee on Tuesday. And then on Tuesday, that group, this subcommittee's next meeting would actually be the ones deciding whether to put it into a draft or adapt it first. So it's not that it would have any issues leading to quorum. So if while taking volunteers, folks could volunteer for one of the 6 parts of the bylaws that we've mentioned, I'll put those in the chat just so that everybody can see them. But please do say it verbally so that it's part of the meeting record. And each one was a slide today. So thank you.
Thanks for the clarification. See Dan, your hands up.
I did send to the co-chairs an entire proposal for the entire set of bylaws. So if I don't have to be at one of these meetings, I can just, I don't know how those can get shared with everybody, but I guess I can make it part of the public record now by uploading it too. But it doesn't matter to me which subcommittee I'm on if I end up participating in one of these subcommittees. I also, before I have to leave, which was about 5 minutes from now, I just want to say I took some time to do the calculations for 60%, 70%, and 2/3 majorities, and I put that into a PDF and uploaded it into the chat, so that when people are talking about those thresholds and trying to figure out which one they think is appropriate, we have those 3 options lined up in that document. Thank you.
Okay, so I see that there's 6 groups, and just for public record, can we please have volunteers for the 6 sections?
I'm happy to volunteer for membership changes if anyone would like to join me, if we have enough people.
I'd be happy to join you. This is Debbie.
Thanks, Debbie.
This is CMOB. I'll join for membership changes as well.
This is Catherine. It seems like quorum and voting kind of go together. I'm happy to volunteer on that.
I'm on for quorum and voting as well.
I see Angie. You had your hand up.
I'll be on any of, you can just put me on whichever ones don't get chosen. I'm good to help out with any of them. So.
And if there are any that people feel especially strong about, you should do something that's different, just so we're not getting people's biases involved in writing the bylaws.
I just want to say I'm sorry I'm not able to join one. It's the timeline. I don't have much availability between now and Tuesday. So that's why I'm sort of abstaining from joining one of the smaller committees.
I just wanted to note that we didn't have much of a chance to talk about officers today. I just wanted to ask the group, does the group feel comfortable with people drafting some language, most likely using the bylaws template around officers that then comes back to the committee or the subcommittee? Or would people prefer having a chance to talk about that? I'm not sure when we'll have a chance to talk about it.
You can make time on the 18th as well, since I think that was like one of the last things.
Yeah, I'm also fine if you want, write something up, telling people ahead of time. This is just a suggestion at this point, that because we didn't get a chance to really hash it out tonight. So then we can rip it apart if we want, so otherwise, or we might all love it. So yeah, you never know.
I see Sophie said 1, 2, and 5. I believe you're saying that you're interested. Can you put a thumbs up if that's right? Yes. So Sophia is interested in participating in voting oh, excuse me, quorum, voting, and communications.
I'd like to be on group number 4 as well.
Okay, I think there's
And-
only one person so far for 4. Okay, Angie, 4 and 5, okay.
Just to clarify, we are permitted to work together in our small groups, recognizing we have no decision-making
Yes,
authority. And then on the 18th, what we're going to do is come together and screen share and put this language that each small group has come up with together into one document. So that's roughly the plan.
yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, so far, what I have is 1 and 2. I have Jason, Catherine, and Sophia. I have Jason and Angie on 4. I have Sophie and Angie on 4. And Lavisa, Debbie, and CMOB on 6. Am I missing anything else? Oh, Dan, I guess we'll do 4 and 3. Thanks, Dan. No, not 4, just, oh, sorry. Okay, just 3. So Dan will not be on 4, he'll be on just 3, which is officers and subcommittees. CMOB,
Just a small question. Would operating rules possibly fit with membership changes? You guys, do you think, Lavisa? There's some, not necessarily overlap, but Disney cousins.
I'm not sure. I have heard, well, I've heard of a document, Jason might be able to speak more to this, but sort of an operations document that isn't necessarily a bylaws document. Sort of the idea that not everything needs to go into bylaws. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question at all. Yeah, I'm not sure is the answer to your question.
Can we do that?
We can do a lot of things if we just decide we're going to do it.
Samir?
Yeah, part of the reason this is set up as the subcommittee on bylaws and internal processes is to allow for additional documentation or community agreements. So there's the interim community standards you already agreed to on December 9th. For example, that's an example of this. There's also the Charter Review Commission has a communications document that was sent out as a reference document to look at. So there's other things that you can do besides bylaws. The minimum is bylaws though. So it's, as Jason said, probably much more briefly than I just did. You can do a lot of things.
So when we're putting the bylaws together, can we take into consideration that we will have an operational operational documentation that will have more detail related to it, so it doesn't have to be complex?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And
Thank you.
I can answer that question. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have about 2.5 minutes left of our meeting. So I just wanted to.
Jason mentioned hearing from the public, and I think we've maybe run out of time on that now. But that's one thing I think we should have in either in our bylaws or in these separate things about how are we going to hear from the public in the context of these meetings. or not these, but I mean our full commission meetings and subcommittee meetings. Because I think I mentioned earlier, I've, been to a number of different meetings, and this setup like this, I just feel is very off-putting for the public. There are other meetings I've gone to where it feels like the public's more integrated into the process, and I would certainly prefer that, and would like to talk about it as a group and decide what we want to do.
We can. Thank you for your comment, Debbie. The January 20th meeting, that's going to be it'll be the Community Engagement Framework Subcommittee, and that's on their agenda. So that'll help as well. Okay. Let's see. That will be framework for the public comment for all PAC activities, not just subcommittees. So I just want to put that out there as well. Okay, so thank you for your time. The subcommittee's next meeting is on Tuesday, January 18th. The co-chairs have asked that we have small group develop text around it, as you all know. So thank you for volunteering. And we'll be excited to have you present your writings at January 18th meeting. Again, the subcommittee meeting is Tuesday, January 18th at 5:30. In addition to reviewing this text, are there any other parts of the subcommittee task list that you guys would like to focus on next meeting?
Have one question.
Yes, Sophia.
Will this be summarized and sent? I'm assuming it'll be summarized and sent in the email. Today's meeting results.
As far as minutes?
Yeah, well, just what we decided on in the subcommittees and who's on them.
Yes. Yes, a meeting report will be created. Are there any other questions? Well, I just want to thank everyone for their time today in having this meeting. And I guess everyone could start signing off if there are any other questions.
Thank you for your facilitation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Big thank you to our ASL interpreters, Ashley and Andrea,
yes,
for UIUMIDE, our facilitator, and also thank you, Samir, our administrator, for all the time and effort you guys pour into this, and my colleagues.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.